Hey, what's going on, Warhammer World? This is Obsidian Anubis, and I'm back with a Ninth Age battle report. This is my 10th and third in a series of battles getting ready for the OFCC, which is a tournament we have up here in the Pacific Northwest at the end of July, July 29th through the 31st, two-day event, 5 games. I'm super excited to be attending this year, so we'll see how it goes. So I'll go ahead and give you an introduction into the armies. So this was the scenario where one of the players is the attacker and one player is the defender. So my opponent was the defender, I was the attacker. So my opponent bubbled in the middle and kind of had the flanks, which were shallower. So my opponent decided to drop their entire army first, as you can kind of see from this picture, and I'll go through it in more detail in just a minute. And then you can see I then got to react to my opponent's drop, and I put all my troops basically on one side to kind of overload that one side and kind of swing over. So that was my plan going into this. So let's go ahead and meet the armies. So my opponent on the far left has a group of 25 Saurus warriors with full command, and in that group is a Saurus veteran with the battle axe. Excuse me. And I think he has something else, but it wasn't really too much of a factor. I don't really remember what it was. Next to that is a Tauasaur with the engine of the ancients. So I realized this is the wrong model for that. My opponent realized that on night turn 2 or 3, and so we swapped it out for the correct model. But it's a Tauasaur. In front of that is a group of 15 Skink Braves with full command. And then in the far right of this picture is a group of 17 Temple Guard with full command. And the reason why the 17 is that's how many my opponent could buy, I guess. That was like the last unit they added to the list. In that group is the Cutter Lord. He is a level 4 Lord of Light. I don't know if he has any magic items. I think he did. I think he had the like 4-up regen or 5-up ward save. Or he had something defensive, but other than that, he didn't really have any magic items. In front of the Temple Guard is a group of 4 Swarms, and then to the right of that is another 15 Skink Braves block with a full command. And behind them is a Skink Priest, a level 1 of Wilderness with a Dispel Scroll. And then to the right of that is a group of 5 Skyriders. And then over here on my opponent's far right is another block of 25 Saurus warriors with full command. And in that front left is another Saurus veteran. This one has the Tauasaur helm, he had a shield, and I think he had the flaming sword with that character. So let's go ahead and meet my army. So my army, if you guys have seen my previous battles, is Sharnock's Horde, a feral orc host from the desert wastes. So over here on my far right flank, so I have my Double D Rock, or the Devil of the Desert Rock. It's just a gargantuan spider with a web launcher. And if you're interested in more detail, I have a brush and fluff video that goes into more detail about the painting for that model. Next to that is a Sharnock's Horde, which is a group of 33 feral orcs with additional hand weapons, full command, and they have the relentless icon. In front of them is just 5 spider riders with throwing weapons. And behind them is a group of 5 boar riders with additional hand weapons. And in the far left of this picture, you can see the corner of it is my Gitz launcher. And then on the right of this picture is my feral giant. I love that model. And then in this picture, I also have 3 characters. So in the front right of the Sharnock's Horde is Sharnock's Wine Rider himself. He has the Warboar, Shield, Tuk-Tek Armor, Spear of Battle, which is aka the Axe of Battle. He has the Crystal Ball and the Dragonfile Gem. And then the large feral orc with the large axe right next to my general, that is Saragoth. He is a feral orc BSB. He has the Mithril Mail, the Obsidian Pebble, and the Waaargh paint, so that way the unit never loses Frenzy. And then back with the board boys, I have a feral orc shaman, a level 2 of Wilderness, and he also has a Dispel Scroll. And then over here in my center and left flank, I have my group of 46 tunnel goblins. These are just aka cave goblins. With that group is a full command and 3 mad gets. And to the right of them is Waaargh Shiny Rock Boys. So those are 25 iron orcs with full command, and they have the Ironhide icon. And then to the right of them is 20 desert goblins. In the Waaargh Shiny Rock Boys is Waaargh Shiny Rock himself. He has the Wizard's Hood, the Backstabbing Dirk, and the Hardened Shield. And in the picture, he's the Iron Orc, which is next to the one with the big stabba. He's kind of desert in color to go with the deserty theme. But I just finally finished painting that block up, and I'm really happy how they came out. So here is an overview of what the battlefield looked like. So for secondary objectives, we're playing Breakthrough. So if you can get any of your scoring units into your opponent's deployment zone, you get additional points for that. So as I said, as a feral orc general, I wanted to just wog and hit the right flank hard and fast and break through quickly and then turn and just kind of meet the rest of his forces in the center. So my left flank is more to just hold up my opponent, and my right flank is going to be doing most of the aggressive forward play. For magic, my level 2 wilderness got the Curse of the Wildwood and the Beast Within, and the Wild Hunt, of course. And then my other wizard rolled up Heavens, and so he got Blizzard and Thunderbolt. So because my opponent dropped first, they obviously got the first turn. So turn 1, Saurian Ancients. Alright, so for the turn 1 movement, you can see my opponent moved up like this, moving up as fast as they could on the left flank, and the right flank only moved, it didn't march. So they wanted to kind of try to get the rest of the troops around before my Feral Orcs could get into combat. For Magic phase, my opponent got 11 power dice, which is a lot. So they threw the first 4 at Burning Brightness on my Feral Orcs. I went ahead and let this through and ended up losing 4 of my Feral Orcs. So I did this because I had the Obsidian Pebble in this group, so they would have had a 5-up ward save. I'm like, I should pass. Well, statistically, I should have passed like about 1.5 or 1.25. So, of course, I rolled no 5s and 6s, so I lost 4. Yeah, it's a Feral Orc luck. I lose a lot of Feral Orcs. It's okay. I'm a Feral Orc general. I don't care if they die. They're grunts. That's why I have them. Next, my opponent cast Divine Banishment on my spiders because they were the only one in range. And again, I let this through because I wanted to stop Beast Within off on some of the other units. So this targeted my spiders and killed 4 of my spiders. However, I did pass my panic test. So, yay me. Alright, so that brings us to Sharnock's Horde, turn 1. Alright, so for charges, I only had 1 charge. I charged my giant into the Sky Riders. They failed their terror test and ran away to where you can see them now. Other than that, I just kind of moved up my right flank as fast as I could, and my left flank moved up slightly, but overall stayed pretty far back. For power dice, I rolled 8 power dice. So the first spell I threw up was Thunderbolt on the Tower Soar. My opponent either failed to dispel or didn't dispel it, and it went off and caused 4 wounds, so that was fantastic. Next, I attempt to cast Curse of the Wildwood off on the far left unit, the purple Star Warriors, so that way if they march, they would take dangerous terrain. Unfortunately, my opponent did dispel that one, and so that was the end of my magic phase. So that brings us to Saurian Ancient turn 2, as there was no close combat or no anything of noteworthy shooting. I think my Git launcher just scattered off. So in movement, you can see I moved my remaining 1 spider just as a slight roadblock in front of my ferals. So my opponent went ahead and declared a charge with the the orange Star Warriors into my spider. He held, and my opponent did make it in, as you can see here. I figured he'd make it in. I'm sure my spider would die, but he'll overrun, and then we'll fight the combat on my next turn, where I have my double D-Rock to charge in on the flank, so that went quite nicely. For the rest of my opponent's movement, you can see they moved up like this. My opponent did, however, manage to rally the Sky Riders, which throughout the game you will see become quite a problem for my army, but not just, give you a sneak peek of what's to come. For magic, my opponent rolled 6 power dice, and they didn't get any spells off. With 6 power dice, I think they threw a banishment, and I used my dispel scroll, and they threw the dice at Beast Within on the orange Star Warriors, and I dispelled that. So that brings us to Sharnock's Horde, turn 2. Alright, so I set the trap, time to counterattack. So I charged my double D-Rock into the flank of the Star Warriors there. I charged my Waaargh Shiny Rock boys into the group of Skink Braves, and I charged my Feral Giant into the Pteranodon Riders, or Sky Riders. I was hoping they would fail the terror test, but unfortunately this time they passed and held, so I moved in like that. My Tunnel Goblins were kind of, the way I positioned them, they were kind of stuck behind my Iron Orcs, so I tried to do a Swift Reform, which I failed, and so they just kind of turned the way you see them here, as I'll probably have them start moving up kind of to protect my Iron Orc's left flank. For magic, I got 6 power dice. However, unfortunately, this turn my opponent used their Dispel Scroll, so I think I threw 3 dice at Blizzard and 3 dice at Beast Within. My opponent diced 1 and scrolled the other. So in close combat, yeah, my Iron Orcs easily broke the Skinks. You can see them here in the top left of this picture, top middle of this picture. They're running away. So I just elected to reform and not chase. And close combat with the Stars Wars. Ho 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 ho. So you can see there's a pile of dead bodies. This is before my ferals have gone. This has only been my characters and my double D rock. My characters have yet to go. So I took this picture because my opponent was rolling for their character because it goes at the same speed as my feral orcs. So I think I lost two or three ferals when my opponent attacked with their captain, and then I attacked back with my ferals. And yeah, I wiped them out to a man minus the character. The character auto broke because my opponent had what 25 going in there, and I killed all 25 minus the character. So yeah, it was definitely an auto break. My ferals had to overrun, so they pursued, as you can see here, and caught the SARS veteran and killed him. So they're gonna have some SARS steaks tonight, which could be fantastic. You know, throw those on the barbecue. It'd be maybe throw in a little basil, little oregano seasoning. Ooh, it's gonna be beautiful. Anyways, that brings us to Saurian Ancient turn 3. So my opponent charged the other group of Skink Braves into my Desert Goblins. I elected to stand and shoot, and I killed off 4 from the stand and shoot. My opponent also charged the Swarms into my Iron Orcs. I held that, of course. And other than that, that was all my opponent's movement. Magic was a bust. My opponent rolled like 2 power dice and failed to cast any spell. It was very sad for my opponent. I did feel kind of bad for them at this point. Shooting, my opponent didn't have much of shooting, so hand-to-hand. I think it was pretty much a big pillow fight between the Desert Goblins and the Skink Braves. I think I killed 1, they killed 1. My opponent charged, I had an extra rank, so it was a pillow fight. Nothing happened. In the fight with the Iron Orcs, I don't remember exactly how many wounds I did. I know I killed off 2 bases, so my opponent had anywhere from 9 to 6 wounds left. And I know I lost 1 Iron Orc in return, so it's a pretty good trade. So that brings us to Charnock's Horde turn 3. And this picture was actually taken after close combat, so kind of this is both my movement, magic shooting, and hand close combat phase, all in one picture. So you can see, first in the bottom left, you can see that after close combat, my opponent only had 1 Skink Brave left. He's now just past the purple Stars Warriors running away, so that character would never rally and would flee off the board. My Iron Orcs wiped out the remaining swarms and just turned to face as they could, so that way everybody's in the front. My Spider charged into the Sky Riders, because my Giant, so far, the first turn he rolled a 1, so he just automatically won by 2, but my opponent easily passed, being cold-blooded. The second turn I rolled I think it was a 3 where your opponent makes an initiative test, and if they pass, then they don't take a wound. Going against Skinks, that's really a bad option because my opponent's initiative is 6, so I'm like, great. So they're never going to fail that. So, and you can see that I actually do have at least 1 wound. I think my opponent gets a total of 3 wounds on that Feral Giant by the end, but you can see he has 1 wound already. So I charged my Spider into there, hoping that she could, get rid of the darn Sky Riders, clear that gap. And my Spider whiffed completely. So yeah, I think I did 1 wound between both the Feral Giant and the Spider and the Goblins. It was sad. In movement, you can also see that I moved my Ferals around so that they now have the position to charge in the flank. My opponent did rally those Skink Braves in front of the Wizard. Anyways, so that brings us to Saurian Ancient turn 4. So this is what it looks like. Actually, this is the same picture I just showed you because just kind of give you what it looks like. The only movement that my opponent did is the purple Stars Warriors charged my Iron Orcs, failed the charge and tumbled forward like 2 inches. The Skink Wizard, which is right now behind the Skink Braves, moved behind the Temple Guard. And the Skinks turned to face my Charnock's Horde. But other than that, my opponent didn't move much. In Magic, my opponent rolled 6 power dice. They threw Divine Banishment, and I tried to dispel it, but I couldn't on the Iron Orcs, and 2 of my Iron Orcs died. But other than that, that was all the spells my opponent managed to get off. No shooting, so in close combat, again, a big pillow fight. You can now see that my Feral Giant has 2 wounds on him. I think my Spider did manage to finally kill off 1 of the 5 Sky Riders, and I think there's 2 wounds remain on 1 of them. So my opponent has now at least lost 1 and 1 is injured, but still, those 2 monsters should be making snacks out of those beasts, but I can't do anything. Again, my Feral Giant rolled like the 2 to 4, so my opponent makes an initiative test, which they easily passed. No worries. And you can see my Giant took another wound again. Great. So this brings us to Shonox Horde turn 4. So for movement, I don't have a picture of that. Well, I charged my Iron Orcs into the purple Soul Slayers, because I figured why not, and I charged my Feral Orcs into the Skink speed bump that was in the way. So as to magic, I got 11 Paradise. I threw up Blizzard on the purple Slayers. My opponent let it off, went it through, because they wanted to stop Beast Within, which they did stop. I also got Curse of the Wildwood off on the Temple Guard, so in case they wanted to try to countercharge, if they did, they would be taking dangerous terrain. In shooting, my Get Launcher finally managed to do something and hit and killed 2 of the Temple Guard. And then here's what the battlefield looks like at the after combat. So you can see my Iron Orcs charged in and killed off, looks like 7 of my opponent's Star Warriors. And in return, looks like I lost about 6 Iron Orcs. So I think if we continue this fight, I would eventually lose. I think Iron Orcs are going to slowly get whittled down just due to the number of attacks coming back at them. I just can't cause enough wounds, which I think is a problem with Iron Orcs in general. Is they're really sturdy troops. They just don't have the damage output that some other units have, aka head bashers. But they can only do what they can do. So yeah, you can see that my giant is still in a fight with the Skyriders. My spider did kill off the 2 that were in base contact, and so it was now out of combat, so it just kind of rotated around, so it could charge the flank of that if it needed. You can see my Feral Orcs in this picture. They wiped out the Skinks to a man. I think my characters wiped them out. I don't even think I even rolled for the unit. And then I overran, and that brought me into contact with the Temple Guard. And this is actually the end of the game. Even though this is only turn 4, we timed it so that it to be 2.5 hours, because that's how much time we have at the OFCC tournament for a game, and this was just under 2.5 hours, so if we did play another turn, it'd be over. So we stopped here and called it. So we went ahead and calculated victory points, and honestly, I didn't lose much. I lost my spiders. That was the one unit I lost. Other than that, all my units were above 25%, so my opponent didn't get any other points from me other than my 5 group of 5 spiders. Me, on the other hand, I got both the Skink Brave units. I got the big group of Saurus Warriors and the Saurus Veteran with that group. And I think I got something else. Maybe. Oh, and I got the Swarms. So, and I ended up having about 750 points more than my opponent, which would be a 13-7 victory. However, my Feral Orcs do have a banner, and they are in my opponent's deployment zone. So I take that as I got the second objective for that, so that gives me an additional 3 and minus is 3 for my opponent. So that gave me a 16-4 victory, which I thought was pretty good. I mean, my opponent still had a lot on the board, but I think the way I was headed, if I could get rid of those darn Skyriders blocking this Feral Giant, I think I would eventually manage to get him into contact with the Ferals, with the purple Star Warriors, or maybe the Pterosaur with the Spider, and I think I'd eventually win that. I may lose my Iron Orcs, but I think my 2 beasts would eventually get in combat and finally break that unit. So that is the end of the battle. So the only thing I was going to say, or post, I guess I should say, is I was going to give most valuable player for this army. So the past 2 games I've done with this army, both times has been the Feral Giant, because he's charged in to infantry blocks and done a massive amount of wounds, which basically saved the Feral Orcs both times. In this battle, not so much. The Feral Giant did really terrible against Skyriders, which is a good thing to know. Don't charge a Feral Giant into Skyriders, because he's not going to do anything. So, at least I learned a lesson. Don't do that. So, but this time I think I've got to give it to my Shonox Horde, which includes both characters as well in that group, because they took a group of 25 Saurus Warriors and wiped them out in a single round of combat. I mean, they did have the double D-Rock and both characters helping them, but I think the unit by itself killed probably 10 to 15 troops by themselves. My spider didn't even stomp because there was nobody left. These guys definitely did their points. They definitely, I think, earned it this time. But other than that, that is the end of this video. So if you guys have any comments or concerns, if I made any mistakes, please point those out. As I said, I'm going to a tournament in just a couple days, I guess, about a week from now. So if I made any mistakes, please point those out so I can get those corrected before I go to the tournament. Also, if you have any comments or any concerns about the videos, please put those down. And as always, if you could hit like and subscribe, I'd definitely appreciate that. And as always, game on.